Hey, this is Tom Salemi of Device Talks. I'm here at the luxurious 160 studios with the amazing Holly Scott of the Mullings Group. Holly, thanks for having me join you.
Oh my gosh, thank you for coming, Tom. thanks for introducing us in my own studio
I know,
here.
this is so
cool.
weird. I was going to say thank you for joining us, but I'm here with you, and this is amazing. And we've got a lot to talk about. You're going to be at Device Talks Boston. You're going to lead our whole conference off with your panel, with talking about sort of the job market and the opportunity for engineers in the job market. And we've seen a lot of flux over the last couple of months, I'd say, even maybe more so.
Certainly.
With the news from Medtronic last week, which I think most people were anticipating, but we finally got the email from Jeff Martha out. So I kind of want to just understand from your sense, I mean, you're obviously hearing from people who have been impacted. What is your overall sense of this particular reset for the med tech industry? Is it in line with things you've seen in the past? Is it better? It's never better. Is it less severe or more severe than in the past? Where are we at?
It's such an interesting time, and yeah, we can't ignore the big picture. This is unlike anything any of us have ever seen before in terms of the history and in the market. Of course, we've been in the industry for a long time. I've seen recessions, I've seen economic ups and downs. Where we're at right now is unique. I will, though, cut to the chase and say I feel we're in a good and I'm optimistic position overall. Now, the med tech industry, there are pockets that are in a lot of pain right now. There are pockets that are struggling. And yes, we've heard from the big strategics and their consolidations, and so many have impacted. We've heard this going on for 6 months or so, you know, with the venture groups pulling back on funding and going into the back end of 22,
and then
of 2022.
Just another big log in the fire there.
That's it. And you know, that's the SVB situation to me was a big sign of the fragility of our economy more than anything. So when I look at comparing to other economic cycles that I've experienced, I see it philosophically different because there's these fractures in the pavement of our foundation that are concerning. Yep. That's the concern that I have. There's this lack of trust. There's this action out of fear that is causing some real fragility in our economy overall. So how's that translating to the health of med tech? Well, the good news is we always, as a globe, as humanity, want to raise healthcare, right? So we're all going to come back to this, okay? And we tend to come back to what we care about, which is improving patients' lives. Along the way, though, there's a lot of reconciliation that's taking place. And this is coming off of the enormous, unprecedented investment from 2020 and 2021 and the conversions of tech, of medical devices, the investors coming in from all sectors and expectations way out of line with what an FDA plan would look like when it comes to the rigor and everything involved. So we, you know, what goes up must come down. We had an unreal couple of years in the investment and in growth, and candidate demand was at an all-time high. And now we're in 2023, and we are feeling the pain from that. And we are in what I call a digital hangover. You know, we're looking at this and saying, okay, it didn't pan out exactly as we expected. The payers weren't ready, the hospitals weren't ready, the clinicians weren't ready, even the tech companies aren't ready.
Right.
So how are we going to write this? And that's what I'm seeing happen. We're going to return to value, and we are. The market is there and good. And there's many companies that are doing really well and just powering through. But there are, we can't sit and say that things are sunshine and rainbows when we know that there's a lot of people that are struggling. And those are not only the big company people, but the seed companies that are struggling to get funding and proving their case over and over again. Even the mid caps and larger, you know, you and I were chatting a little bit about this yesterday. Some of the later stage startups are having a more difficult time in that early revenue stage to get expanded commercial support. And so there's pockets that are struggling, and it comes down to this foundation.
Let's drill down on a few of those. And it's funny that you say about, we'll get back. When I first started covering the industry, you know, the dot-com boom busted and I remember calling people, like, oh, what are we going to do now? And the older VCs would be like, calm down. It's like, we're going to get back to it. Now I hear myself like, we've been through this before. It always gets better.
Yes.
I think we always pick up the pieces that are on the floor and build something better.
Yes.
So I know we have those pieces here. You mentioned a couple of times pockets that are having trouble. Are those pockets, are they representative of a certain job classification or a certain type of industry or a certain type of technology? What's one or two of those pockets that you think are maybe facing stronger headwinds than others?
Well, again, kind of comes back to the companies. Let's take it on a company size basis. The bigger organizations are cutting around areas that are either higher risk or slower rate of return.
Okay.
And that can be a general category. Are only engineers affected? No. Are there some engineers affected? Yes. Are there marketing people affected? Are there salespeople affected? Are there, people are being affected throughout these organizations. It's really about focus. It's where are the companies focusing. So when a company returns to a conservative focus, what's cut? Typically the innovation, the things that are farthest, riskier, those are the things that are going to feel the most pain, the things that are going to be the most impacted. So what's interesting about the pockets in these circumstances is those that are on that edge and may be impacted might now have a great opportunity to leverage that innovation where it's typically leveraged, which is the smaller organizations. The smaller organizations are typically on the tip of the spear with driving forward new ideas, and that's where the acquisitions come in and such. So the pockets are, big companies, again, that risk proposition, the pockets that are struggling in younger companies and trying to secure funding. There's a host of reasons why they could be struggling, but if it's not crystal clear value proposition and return on investment, they're going to have a tough time right now. It's got to be sung 10 different ways where this organization is going to be successful in order for them to really raise the dollars they need.
Interesting. And you work with smaller companies. That's your primary focus.
Primarily.
Primarily. This would seem to be both a good and a bad time. I guess every time is good and bad, but there's going to be a lot of talent available for these smaller companies. You mentioned earlier there's capital available, and I'm guessing the prices are kind of coming down. That's going to make those investors more eager even to invest. So how do you see all of this bad news maybe leading to some positive news for those smaller companies that you do work with?
Yeah, so we're seeing it. Okay, so this is happening real time, and this is where things are getting much better. The organizations that are having the layoffs and cutting are not necessarily doing so based on talent or anything. So there's some very, very good people who have been impacted.
Sure.
And they now have the opportunity to go where innovation happens, as I alluded to before, where an innovation happens in these young companies. So if they're able to transition into the young companies and do so, these young companies are gaining more momentum in what great looks like, and bringing in talent that can see the forest through the trees and can help them stage the organization for a potential partnership long term. At the end of the day, many of them want to be acquired by the big strategics anyway. That's the end game. So the cycle is it turns. They innovate, they shred, they get conservative, and then all of a sudden they'll go on a buying spree again.
This is just occurred to me. I've seen a few posts on LinkedIn. Folks my age, I'm in my early 50s still, holding on to the early 50s, who have taken early retirement. And they're clearly, I'm not done. I'm guessing they're not done. Are they attractive targets? I imagine they must be attractive targets for a startup to have someone who's gone through big company career for 30 years or more, and now they can bring all that know-how to a smaller company.
Yes, and I want to be bold and speak very candidly on this because it's really important. If you're over 50 and you don't have digital prowess to a basic level, you are going to create obsolescence for yourself.
Interesting.
So and marketing people who are in big strategics and don't have representation on media that speaks to their brand are going to have a very, very difficult time getting anything secured.
Interesting.
And I mean that because I want to empower people to make changes. And it's not an age thing, it's the market, okay? It's the market. If you're 20 and you're not doing it, then you're also obsolete. But that's not happening with the 20-year-olds.
No,
They're
it's
coming out. So do you see where I'm going with this? It's important that those of you who are in that band, in your tenure, in your career, you have to at least recognize that media is not going away, and it's part of your superpower, because you can speak now about your own expertise and build your own identity that doesn't necessarily have to be tethered to a Medtronic or a J&J or Boston Scientific. You can become a subject matter expert and speak about the decades of exposure you've had and what you've done. People want to know about that.
Right.
Like you said, the small companies want to know about it.
Yep.
The first-time founders want to know about it. The first-time C-suite wants to know about it. And these people want the experience. And by the way, they're hiring experience because we're in a conservative market. In conservative markets, we take less risk. So I'd rather hire 50-plus-year-old Tom to be my head journalist because he's been there and he's not going to, there's not as much risk as my 30-year-old up-and-comer. And even though, they got a lot of fire in the belly, sometimes we go tried and true in a more conservative market. So there are serious advantages at this time. If you can take a package and you can start thinking about yourself as a subject matter expert, not only could you become valuable to an organization in a full-time capacity, but consultancy is also a huge, huge win for those who want to leverage all the exposure they've had.
That's a great point. I wonder if we're going to see, this is completely off topic, but not entirely off topic, but we've seen a lot of, our peers throughout the career have, to your point, have tied their identity to being Medtronic Blue or Stryker, and they've been part of this family and this team, and they've really found strength in that. I think that's great. But you wonder if an opportunity had been missed, that because they didn't tell their own story and say, this organization is great and here's how I help it, and they focused as much on the here how I helped it, I've helped it, as much as how great the organization is. Do you see us transitioning more? I think younger people already get it, clearly. But I think people in their 40s and 50s, as you said, we need to start telling our own stories as well.
We have to. We have to. And it's not only the individual's, I hate to say fault, but it's also companies' policies have been ridiculous over the years.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Companies' policies have given individuals pause in what they can share and what they are willing to share and say, and what am I able to talk about this? Am I making HR look at me and think I'm looking? There's all kinds of shrouds around it. But at the end of the day, if you're making action based on what you know as an individual in the industry that really doesn't tether you to an organization or their actions, you can speak about anything. You can talk about how great you think this technology is, or why this market is important because your grandma passed from it, or you can give yourself that permission, because that I can't take. That's the same reason LinkedIn is to the individual, not the company.
Right.
We are an individual when we go on LinkedIn and we post, no matter what banner you put above your head.
Yeah, we've had that conversation recently on the podcast about the restrictions against people posting on LinkedIn. It's not fair to anybody. It's not fair to the employer, to the employee, and I don't think it really benefits the employer either. I think if an employee is out there telling their story about how great they are, how excited they are, how passionate they are, that only reflects positively on the employer as well. So, last bit, helpful tips for folks. So, let's talk to first people who have been impacted by all that's gone on. What are 3 things they can do to right their ship?
Yeah, so there's a lot you can do, and fortunately, you and I spent a lot more time on it in our podcast too. So I'd like to encourage those who want more comprehensive information to check that out. But the top 3 things you can do are plan, brand, and work. Okay, those in simplest terms. And what I mean by that is plan. So let's start with plan. We have to think about ourselves as a product or service. okay? Even if you're an engineer, software engineer, electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, you have to now say, okay, I am a product or service. What value can I bring, and who is my customer? Okay, it starts there. And when it starts there, then you create your target plan, your target list. Who am I going to approach? What companies are of interest to me? Who within those organizations is going to feel the most pain if I don't reach out with my solution? What solution can I offer the market? Now, this is building out a comprehensive plan, and this is in parallel to step one, work your network, okay? This is something that we, unfortunately, are all guilty of waiting until we need it to do it.
Yep.
Please, please, everyone, try and stay close to those who you know are influential in your game. And your game may be journalism, my game may be search. I need to stay close to the people who know what they're doing. Not just because I might need them one day, but because we learn from each other.
Sure.
And we share, and we become better and stronger. And when you become better and stronger with your network, you are then elevating to a certain circle that you are continually thought of. It's, you know, it's psychology 101. You know, you just want to stay current and top of mind. So in parallel to creating and executing a well thought out specific plan on where you want to go, also work your network, okay? So that's the build part. The brand part is, as mentioned, we have a playground. We have LinkedIn, which is the biggest professional networking site, and it's not going away. Did you see the billions of dollars that Microsoft paid for that platform? It's not going anywhere,
Yep.
okay? And we're seeing individuals get in later and earlier in life, so the span of influence is only growing. So you want to really work your plan and your brand to elevate your expertise. So if you are an engineer who knows catheter design, then you need to speak about interesting catheter design work that's going on out there. It doesn't have to be your own, but it should be somebody else's, or it could be, boy, this is really neat what Shockwave's doing, or this is a great product what Gentuity's doing. You know, speak about what you care about and what you want individuals to recognize in you. And then, you know, lastly, do it on a consistent basis. This is really important. Every day, I can't put a post out and then go black for a week and expect it to get any traction. You really have to engage every single day with the market, with your network. So plan your time to at least give yourself 1 to 2 hours a day of working your search efforts. And that's going to include networking, that's going to include following new companies, posting new content, and do things that are going to keep you in the game regardless. Volunteer. You can actually offer to go to an organization and shadow someone that you really admire for a day or so. I mean, this is what new doctors do when they're interested in getting into medicine. They don't just raise their hand and say, hire me. You know, these are the steps that people take that get you noticed. And that's really the important piece in this, is you want to get noticed by the people that you want to get noticed by.
Great points. And looking again at the transition that we've gone through, the layoffs, those folks who have survived it, you know, I'm sure they feel great, but I don't think anyone can feel complacent after it's happened, because we hope things will get better. We're confident things will get better. Things don't always get better. Or 10 years from now, things may get bad again in a different way. So what can folks do now? They're still at the companies, the jobs they love, but they want to make sure they're protected next time the cuts come. What can they do?
Yeah, it's a great point, and it goes back to what we were talking about with the organizations that have had to make cuts. The cuts are felt not only by the people who are walked out the door, but it's felt by every single individual who's been sitting by that person during their tenure. And that could be a year, that could be 30 years. Every single person has a different position once they know layoffs are coming. So we go from playing offense to defense. It's a psychological mechanism of survival. We go from thinking and innovating and challenging and taking risks to playing, what are we going to do to make sure that my job's not next, right? So, so two pieces of that. First of all, in the big picture, if you are viscerally against that conservative approach, you do need to start thinking about how to make a move, because these companies and the organizations are not going to be making big changes towards innovation anytime soon. So start thinking bigger picture. Now, bigger picture, you may start planning a search, and you may start chatting with recruiters or starting to work your network or doing things that could get you in a pocket that you're going to have more feeling of security around innovating, not security around jobs, because I don't care what company you're in, there's no such thing, but security around what you bring to the organization being valuable and you being your authentic self. And if your authentic self says, I need to ideate and push the envelopes and fail fast and do all the things that these young tech organizations want to do, or these tech groups want to do, these innovative circles within larger companies, you may want to start thinking bigger picture. If you are in a position, even if you are looking and you need to hold on to your role, the big picture here over the next 12 months is we are all going to be working harder for less money than we did in the last couple of years, okay?
Ouch.
Bottom line, and that's sales and beyond. I'm talking every person, every position I'm making this year, every hire I'm making, I'm letting them know that if they get an increase, they'll be fortunate, but I'll be surprised, because at the end of the day, we're doing this reconciliation of this market that had gotten out of bounds. So there's some things that we have to really sit back and sacrifice a bit. So the work's got to be put in. We're going to work harder. We're going to earn less or the same, maybe the same money, and we're going to have to do things that others aren't doing or aren't willing to do. Okay. Get back to the office. I hate to say it. I know it's a bad word. If you're reluctant to go into the office, it's going to limit opportunities. If you're in an organization that's encouraging back to office and you're one that's holding on, it's going to have some repercussions. It's a risky proposition right now. And we're not here to debate whether remote works or it doesn't. It doesn't matter. Right now, the climate is all hands on deck, and where can we drive clear value, clear innovation? What I'm not seeing, though, are sweeping cuts. We're not cutting a lot, not people. I mean budgets around education, around development, around some of those areas, which is good. In general, the market still wants to move forward. So stay in the game, double down, work hard, work smart, and we'll push through. We'll push through. I think we'll all be in a much better position in 6 to 12 months.
That's good to hear. And just curious, I mean, you say contact a recruiter, have a conversation. I'm sure most of the people listening haven't done that. What is that like? I mean, I'm sure it's kind of weird for someone to say, I'm having a conversation with a recruiter. They feel maybe a little guilty. What is that conversation? I imagine it's just to tell me about yourself so I know your story. That's
a great question, because there's a lot of misconceptions about speaking with a recruiter. First of all, there's on both sides. I do not want to minimize the impact of someone conducting a job search, especially one that's been impacted by a company that they've been tied to. You hit on something about, I've identified with this organization for so many years. This is like mourning a death. This is a really, really big grievance and a process. So as you step away from that and you think about, what's next, we want to work all. There's not one solution. I wish every inbound call that I got, I could place that person, but that doesn't happen. We are counsel for you. We are confidential counsel. And the impact of chatting with a recruiter in your industry is you get a sense of what's going on. You get to tell your story, so you are on their radar, so they know when and if something comes up that you are able to be contacted. And the misconception is you're immediately looking. Not true. You're having a conversation. And the other misconception is that we can magically, create positions. We can't do that either. We are really brokering deals that happen based on market need. And if we have something, we want to make sure we know you, and we want to know that more than your resume, more than your LinkedIn profile, that you do have a tie to Minneapolis that is important to understand, or you do have a real serious interest in living overseas for a couple of years and raising your kids there. You know, there are things that go well beyond the paper that's important to understand in that conversation, and it allows you to hear what's going on. You know, ask your recruiter, how many placements did you make in the last year, specifically in R&D, or specifically with startups, or specifically in Boston? You know, whatever's important, it's a bidirectional conversation. You should walk away feeling comfortable that you got insight into what's going on in the market. You may or may not have an immediate possibility, there may be. And if there is an immediate possibility, you owe it to yourself to explore it. Explore it doesn't mean you're jumping. Explore it doesn't mean you're taking the job. It doesn't even, exploring it means you are learning more about yourself and your own career development and what's out there that could potentially take you in a different direction.
I mean, I can't imagine that. To have that conversation with you, I can't imagine an easy way for someone just to assess where they are in a marketplace than to talk with someone like yourself. They get to talk to you, they get feedback, and you might say like, oh my God, that's a really valuable skill that that person didn't even appreciate that was that valuable. So
Yes.
for a self-assessment, and I'm only guessing that at least more than once, you've probably gotten a phone call one week and then an opportunity a week or two later, and you're like, oh my God, someone just called me, let's get you together. I'm sure
Yes.
that happens.
Happens all the time. It happens all the time. That's why it's important to have and it can happen real time. You know, I can be on a call with someone and say, you know, I just had a call this morning.
Get them
It
on
was
hold.
really interesting.
Hold on one second.
Yeah. Can we party line this?
Exactly.
I don't know if do they do that anymore? Do they party line?
You can conference them in, yes, you can.
Yeah. No, it's important. It's important for you. Think of it as working out, right?
Yeah.
It may not be something that you like doing, but once you do, you feel better.
Yep.
And it's something that you're doing for your development. Don't think of it as a means to an end. Don't think that if you pick up the phone, you're going to leave your job. That's not going to happen. It may, but it's multi-steps, first of all. And our role in our organization is we help facilitate a decision. It doesn't have to be a yes.
Right.
We help facilitate a decision on both sides. We want your time to be well spent. We want the client's time to be well spent. And it may take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 meetings to find out, you know what, it's just not right.
Yeah, and then you appreciate what you have.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Because I guarantee you when we get to the end, I'm not going to get you an offer so great that you're going to be like, forget all those concerns I had in all those meetings. You know, you're going to get to the finish line and you're going to say, man, this makes sense for me, for my career. It makes sense for my family. It makes sense for where I want to go. It's a different type of growth, and I really want to make this work. And then we hash out and you get your mild to moderate increase. I mean, that's the reality of how these things pan out, and they take time.
Yep.
They take time. So I certainly want to be part of the equation when people are not just looking, when people are career-minded. And career-minded starts from college, from even high school, you know, depending on where the person's at. Whenever you really start thinking about career and career development, start thinking about what assets you have. And a good search firm, a good search recruiter, a good headhunter is an incredible asset.
That's great. Well, you'll be at Device Talks Boston on May 10th.
Can't wait.
11th, so
Can't wait.
You're going to be kicking it off, as I said at the start. A great way to meet you would be to go there. And we do have a code, TMG25, if anyone wants to attend and save 25% off the price. Got a code set up for that. So that's another great way to get out there, hear what other people are working on, hear about other technologies, but also meet with people like yourself who can put the power back in your hands and kind of help you navigate your own course going forward. So grateful that you and Joe Mullings will be at Device Talks Boston. It's going to be great.
Thank you. We're grateful for our partnership with you and the Device Talks team.
Thanks
You guys
very much.
do an amazing job.
Thanks. Well, it's great. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. I'm really hopeful for the future, even though we've had a bit of bad news over the last couple of weeks. I think there are many positive things that can come from this, both for startups and for larger companies and for the people in those companies. They can sort of take this opportunity to assess, to realize what they have is where they want to be, and to really pour more energy into that role that they have, or to contact someone like Holly and just get a sense of what's going on out there as well. So thank you for joining us on this conversation. It's been great to do this interview with Holly Scott at 160 Studios.